Welcome to the Way Out Recovery Hour. I'm Bob Sharits, and happy Thanksgiving week. If you're listening or watching us on Facebook or checking in with us in any way and you're a little bit confused because I was just here last week, don't worry about that. This is a special broadcast. We decided to come in today and do a show with Jessica Hartley, who is a relationship expert, relationship coach. And the reason that we want to do this is because the holiday season is upon us. Happy Thanksgiving, happy Christmas, all that stuff that's coming up. Families come together. For some families, this can be, and for some individuals, this can be a really difficult time. A lot of us don't know how to talk to each other. We don't know how to listen to each other. And personal relationships oftentimes can be our most difficult sort of aspect in life. So we're going to get some tips today. We are going to talk about what healthy relationships look like, talk about how to heal and repair if relationships have been damaged by various things like drug and alcohol issues, mental health issues, infidelity, whatever comes up in relationships, and talk about healing from those issues as well. We are the Way Out Recovery Hour, and the Way Out is an intensive outpatient program. We're located on the corner of Plum and Bouquet Canyon. Come on over there and drop us a visit. We're in the same shopping center as the Vincenzo's and the La Casina, on the same side as 7-Eleven, all the way down at the other end, corner of Plum and Bouquet. If you or a loved one is struggling with mental health or drug and alcohol issues, please give us a call at 296-4444 and or reach us on our website. You can put in for a free confidential assessment through our website at thewayoutrocoveryscv.com. You can always email me personally, Bob at thewayoutrocoveryscv.com, or give me a call on my cell phone. I'm always available at 661-383-6550. So again, if you're struggling or a loved one is struggling, ask somebody for help. That's the beginning of the wonderful change that can take place in the recovery process, is ask somebody for help. If it's not us, ask a family member, a friend, a loved one. If you're a teenager, ask a trusted adult and get the help that you need. We are always available for you. Before we get into our show, I want to get some things out of the way as far as introducing Jessica. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bob.
So, recovery coach, recovery expert, does that fit?
Relationship, yes.
I'm into recovery, but recovery's in relationships, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Relationship expert and coach. What does that exactly mean? What do you do?
Well, so most people find me when they're struggling in their relationship and they want to save their relationship, whether it be husband and wife, or sometimes it's other relationships. Sometimes it's, parent-child or siblings, or it's really about the relationships that matter most to them, So to be able to heal and come back into connection. But again, my specialty is really working with the marriage relationship or the spouse or the two partners, the love relationship.
Okay, great. I know it's important all year long to, I'm going to go a couple of different directions, because when you said by the time people reach out to me, they're like usually in crisis, or they need some help, or they're right on the edge of those relationships going separate ways, which is exactly what happens with us. By the time somebody walks in our door, they're like, oh my God, it's horrible. Help us. Yes. Right? What I want to do, and if at some point in the show today, I really want to talk about how do we not get there, right? Mm-hmm. Like, what can we do to nurture and maintain healthy relationships so that we don't end up having to call you or me and say, oh my God, we're in crisis. But also, I know that it's really important all the time to maintain healthy relationships and use the tools that you're going to give to us today. But why is it more important now than any other time of year?
Well, this is the time of year where families come together. So oftentimes when there's resentments or pain, it can be very hard because we have two conflicting needs inside of ourselves. One is I do want to spend time with my family and my loved ones and feel that bond and that togetherness and and the love, but at the same time I am hesitant because there are wounds, or will those wounds get reopened if I go, or will I not be seen for who I really am, or will I be judged? And so those are some of those things that keep people sort of in this conflict. Sometimes people don't show up to their family stuff for those
so
reasons.
Afraid of that.
Absolutely, yeah.
I get that. Okay, so you're going to be starting a show on KHTS as well?
Yes,
Tell
absolutely.
us about the show.
So my show will be called Thriving Relationships. It will be Wednesdays from 2 to 3, and it starts December 12th.
Great.
So it'll go from then on. And this show is just going to be about offering tips, healing. We're going to have people calling in and being able to ask about stuff that they're struggling with, specifically in how to step into a relationship that is thriving, that not only works, but is really thriving, because that's really what we're all going for. And for me, the reason I got into relationship coaching is because there are so many people that are just struggling in their relationships. And relationships can be hard when you don't have the right tools, when you don't know exactly how to navigate it, or you don't have the right perspectives. And for me, I came from a troubled childhood. So I had a lot of wounds coming in to my own relationship and to my life, really. And I had to learn how to not only heal them, but to transition that wound or that hole into something that's grounded and secure and confident and thriving, so that I can create the ideal relationships and life experience that I really wanted. So that's what I really want to offer people, or I have been offering people, but with the show, is to really put it out there in a little bit more hands-on, accessible kind of way.
Well, and you're going to be doing a show on what I think is for a lot of the trickiest thing to navigate in life, right? And that's personal relationships. Yeah. And certainly it comes up a lot in the world of drug and alcohol recovery and treatment and mental health. One of the greatest challenges that we in the recovery process face is personal relationships, and how do you navigate that? And you talk about childhood stuff that you bring into relationships, and many people might think of that as like baggage that I'm bringing in. And if I don't start to look at that and resolve that, it's always going to come up, especially the closer that I get to a person.
Right.
And so my hunch is Wednesdays at 2:00. It's a weekly show.
Yes.
Wednesdays at 2:00, and you're doing call-ins. I don't think you're going to have time for all the people that are calling in. You're going to be blown up, and your show is really going to take off. And if you're out there paying attention to this show, make sure that you put that on your calendar. One of the wonderful things about the world of sort of broadcasting and social media and everything is that even if you don't have the ability to tune in live, right, which you can on AM 1220 or FM 98.1, or you can watch the Facebook live streams, that we have the ability to go back and watch it later. And so make sure that you tune into Thriving Relationships.
Yes.
Thriving Relationships with Jessica Hartley on Wednesdays at 2 p.m. If somebody wanted to see you privately and get some help, how do they contact you? You have a website. How do we get a hold of you?
So my email is connect@jessicahartley.com, or my phone number is 347-8473.
Okay. And we'll come back at the end we'll come back and we'll do that again to make sure everybody has your contact information. We're going to take a break in a second here, but if you're just tuning in, stay tuned. We got a little piece of what we're going to be talking about. We're going to look at what healthy relationships look like, what sort of tears those apart or doesn't allow that to happen. And, and if drugs and alcohol, mental health are a piece of that picture, what does that look like? And what do organizations like yours and mine working together? How can we help people heal? And then I think most importantly, what we can bring into a healthy relationship so that it is thriving. so that it is thriving. Because I love what you just said. I don't want to just be in a sort of hanging out with somebody, being coexisting with them. I want to have a relationship that I look forward to, that I want to show up for, that I thrive in, like you're talking about, and we can enjoy life together. So this is the Way Out Recovery Hour. I'm Bob Sharits in studio with Jessica Hartley. We will be back in a couple of minutes right after this break.
You worry because your mom and dad aren't as active and are finding it more challenging to live on their own. The answer? Premier Assisted Living Community, Oakmont of Santa Clarita, now leasing. Located on Newhall Ranch Road, Oakmont of Santa Clarita, bringing comfort and luxury to assisted living. Your parents can enjoy 5-star amenities and panoramic views in a world-class community. No other assisted living community has this kind of luxury and amenities in our valley. Visit oakmontofsantaclarita.com.
It's never been so easy to have a great night out. Whether it's a date night or girls' night out, experience Pinot's Palette in Valencia or Encino. Order your favorite drink from the bar and paint your very own masterpiece. No art experience needed. Local artists make it easy for you, so you can paint, sip, and listen to great music while creating a one-of-a-kind masterpiece. Fun, relaxing, and memorable. Pinot's Palette. To book your party, go to pinotspalette.com. That's pinotspalette.com.
Chestnuts roasting on an open fire.
This Christmas, join us for the ultimate holiday concert, A Very Merry Christmas with the Letterman, Sunday, December 9th, 5 p.m. at the Santa Clarita Performing Arts Center. The legendary Letterman here in Santa Clarita singing your favorite holiday classics. Joining them is Santa Clarita's singing sensation, Savannah Burrows, along with our very own West Ranch High School choir. You'll also hear the Letterman perform their string of top 10 hits. A Very Merry Christmas with the Letterman.
Have yourself a merry little Christmas.
The Letterman, Savannah Burrows, and West Ranch Choir, Sunday, December 9th. For tickets, visit canyonspack.com.
Merry Christmas. KHTS.
Now FM, 98.1 FM, and AM 1220, your hometown station.
Welcome back to the Way Out Recovery Hour. I'm Bob Sharits, and this is the Way Out Recovery Hour. We are in studio today on a special broadcast with relationship expert and relationship coach Jessica Hartley. Pay attention. She's going to have a show starting here on December the 12th, Wednesdays at 2 p.m., and it is Thriving Relationships. So pay attention to that show coming up real soon, to the already wonderful things that are going on over here at KHTS. This is a really good match, Jessica, in the sense that most of what we deal with, so people come in and their immediate need when they come to our treatment center is either they need a detox, they need to stop using drugs, they need to just put a stop to that kind of behavior. Once that happens, which usually happens pretty quick, either we put them in a detox or they're already in their first couple of days, they've stopped that behavior. What's left is, okay, now how do I interact in the world?
Right. Mm-hmm.
How do I have relationships with other people? And what comes up for us a lot is old wounds, like you were talking about before. You know, a lot of the addictive behaviors are driven by past relationship issues and vice versa. Mm-hmm. Right? And so when you're working with, when somebody shows up to your office or calls you, how often are drugs and alcohol part of relationship issues in your experience?
Well, it always shows up in one way or another. And the way I like to sort of describe it is more of an addiction rather than a specific drug or alcohol.
Okay,
because
fair, yeah.
Sometimes that addiction could just be addiction to, an ego issue, or sometimes it's the way that they react whenever their buttons are pushed, So sometimes, it shows up in different ways, but it's still an addiction that I'm working with constantly,
Right.
So it's like, this is my go-to way to react. And it's because of all this stuff and the way that I've been conditioned and my experiences in the past, so it's like we have to sort of break that apart and look at that and rewire it, reprogram it, heal it if there's pain there, and move forward. Yeah.
So I'm going to take you through a little scenario, and I want to just kind of see what you would do with this. My wife and I show up, and it's all her fault. I know that I drank, okay? I know that I drank, and she's blaming all this and saying that I'm an alcoholic, but I just drink a little bit. It's not a big deal. If she didn't nag me so much, and she wasn't on my case all the time, I wouldn't drink. I wouldn't need to drink near as much as I do. What do you do in stuff like that?
Well, so it's like, all right, I can see you like this one.
Well, because I get that a lot,
Okay.
we get that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So, it comes is every time that there's a conflict, there's always two sides to it. And something that I teach often is that each person in their perspective, they are right. So you're right, and also your wife is right.
I'm like, I told you. See?
Yes. So it's almost a moot point, really, to try to figure out who's right. We kind of just sort of say, like, okay, let's move that to the side. You're both right, and you're both wrong, and you're both just doing the best that you know. So let's figure this out in a way that can actually be constructive instead of just pointing fingers.
Yeah, got it. We do this thing where, and it's interesting when you get a family unit in there, when you have more than just two people. So oftentimes we'll get, and I especially get kind of pushback when it comes to when the teenager is our client. So I'll get a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old who's coming in because they have some issues, whatever that is, drug and alcohol, or maybe they're hurting themselves or whatever. And the family will come in. Maybe there's a sibling. Oftentimes mom and dad may or may not be together. They may be divorced. And everybody comes in and they're all sort of pointing their fingers at he or she, at the kid.
Right.
That our lives are wrecked because he or she won't get their stuff together. And so it's hard for them to hear when I say, okay, the first thing that I'm going to do is inside of these groups and inside of this arena is nobody gets to blame or point the finger at anybody else. We're all going to point the finger at ourselves and ask ourselves, what in me needs to change, right? And so we do that thing where, yes, you're right. Your life's a mess because of this behavior right here. You're right in that. But changing that behavior isn't going to necessarily change the way that you feel. You have to learn how to be okay whether or not that's still going on, and we point it back to the other person.
Right. What you're talking about is just how we, as a society and as a culture, we grow up learning to be dependent in our relationships. So my happiness is dependent on what you do or don't do. And if you do or don't do this thing, then I can either hold a grudge or be happy or thrive or, whatever else it is. And so what you're talking about is really the kind of the core of what is some of the fundamental stuff that we have to sort of reprogram and sort of rewire for ourselves about how relationships work. Because in order to thrive, if you want to ask, that question that you asked earlier, what does a thriving relationship look like? Well, the very first thing is that they're independent, that they're coexisting together independently, not necessarily so embedded in I need you to be A, B, C, and D, and when you're not, then you're not good enough for me.
Well, let's spend a couple of minutes on that dirty word codependency, right? Like nobody likes to hear that. Oh, you're in a codependent relationship. Wait a minute here. And but that's the truth, right? Is when the way that I feel is dependent on how you're doing, then I need some work in that area.
Absolutely. And so there's an opportunity for growth for both parties involved, really. The family surrounding the one that's struggling and then the one that's struggling and the family. And it's so related. So the opportunity is to learn a little bit more self-sufficiency, self-honor, awareness, and take more responsibility for my actions, my thoughts. Our thoughts are at the root of everything. So if I'm thinking I'm not good enough because my parents or everyone else is pointing their finger at me and saying that I'm not, then I'm going to believe that. But the way out would be more of taking control of that thought and saying what my parents or the world thinks about me has nothing to do with me. Right. I'm inherently good,
Well, and that can take some work. I mean, you talked about, we all, whether you like it or not, we all bring our unresolved issues or our stuff that we don't want to look at or whatever however you want to call it. We always, whether we like it or not, bring that into every relationship we come into, right? And so it can take a lot of work and sometimes a lifetime worth of looking at that old stuff to be able to at least be aware. I don't know that I have fully control over not bringing that stuff into, but to be aware of what I'm bringing in and how I'm reacting and the thoughts that are behind it so that I'm not unconsciously bringing that into every relationship and sabotaging and doing all that stuff that I do,
Absolutely, yeah. One of the things that I like to give as a little tool for some of my clients is that if they can fill in the blank to the end of the sentence, I'm upset because, and then they can fill in that blank, that means that there's some codependency going on there. Right. So
what does the sentence look like? I'm upset? Should it stop? It just stops right there. Is that what healthy looks like? I'm upset.
Well, no, healthy is I'm in control of my own emotions.
Got it. Yeah. I'm having a feeling right now, and so what am I going to do that's appropriate to that feeling rather than
right? Yeah. So that it's the because that is sort of that we're trying to put on this other thing caused me to be upset,
right.
But really it's this thing happened. And I allowed that to trigger some wounds or some pain or some, reinforced negative thinking. And that is what is causing the upset inside of me. So I really am the one responsible to detach that meaning, to sort of cut the tie of that link. And in our brains, that's what's happening, so it's sort of like this is the stimulus, and then there's a direct link that happens subconsciously, and then this is the response inside of me, my emotional response and everything else. So noticing that I'm triggered or I'm upset is absolutely always the first step, is to notice that,
right.
And then to choose a different reaction.
Isn't it neat when somebody gets that, like so what happened for me was, as I was going through my own recovery process, I noticed one day that I didn't react the way I had always reacted. And I was like, things are changing.
Yes.
Things are changing. And I didn't see that it was changing, except that I was practicing some tools back here, like just awareness, like meditating and being aware of my presence and being aware, like learning how to just sit and do nothing in a feeling so that I could feel how, rather than always react. And after practicing that, I didn't necessarily see how that was going to translate into life until I had that experience. And I think it was driving or something, where I drove and something happened, it got cut off or whatever, and I'd always reacted a certain way in the past. I got to where I was going and it dawned on me, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, things are different now.
Right.
And it was neat because I had this experience where I go, I don't have to be like a victim to my emotions or something, right?
Yeah. And when you're going through this growth process, when this is the way you've always been doing it, and then you're learning a different way, I always tell everyone, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to fail. So go forward and let yourself fail, and then just dust yourself off and do it again. And then the next time you do it, you're going to get a little bit further, and then you're going to get a little bit further. And then that time will come where all of a sudden you actually do something different. and that's when you start. I mean, it feels so much more freeing.
Right.
You're no longer. Right. It really does feel like we're chained to our emotional reactions, and it's as if our brain has control over us rather than us having control over our brain and our reactions.
Right.
So it's a big difference.
Yeah, and I love that. Is give yourself a break. Don't beat yourself up if you can't get it right the first time. It takes practice. It takes practice. Yeah, because we're learning. Not only are we learning, for some people, a way of reacting that's been a lifetime, but a lot of times it's multi-generational. Right? That's what we were taught, and that's what we were taught, and that's what we were taught. And in the world of 12-step, there's some literature, and one of the things that we hear, they read it at a lot of the meetings, one of the things that we hear a lot, it says, some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely, right? And when you're reading that, you go, well, what does that mean? And you touched on it earlier. The old ideas that even when I was a kid and my parents were going through some rough divorce or whatever, the old idea that somehow that was my fault, somehow I caused that, somehow I'm not worth it, somehow it's all going to come crash, whatever those old ideas that you have about yourself, like I'm never going to amount to anything, or it's all my fault, or whatever that looks like, we have to rewire that too. Mm-hmm. We have to start to look at, what I do is I have people that I can do this with, but I also have this sort of automatic where I challenge my own thoughts before I take an action on something. I go, am I seeing things the way that they really are, or the way that my head spins things? Mm-hmm. Because I can bring all that in, and what I found out is that I lie to myself a lot. I pass a judgment on a situation, and it's not the truth because I see it a certain way, and I've been doing that my whole life. And I got to a point one day where I said, maybe I was lying to myself back then too. Yeah. Maybe it wasn't my fault. Maybe they were just going through some stuff, and all that stuff that I've been carrying around for so long, Yeah.
The way that you're speaking about it is, as if like it's this lie, but the way that I teach it is similar, but a little slightly different. It's like, you could be looking at the exact same thing, like my parents and having a divorce. And from my perspective, it feels true that it's my fault.
It's always true. Everybody's right?
Yeah. So it's like you could be looking at the exact same thing, but there's multiple perspectives that you could choose at any given time.
I like that.
Yeah.
I could choose a different perspective.
Yeah. So it's neat. Really about, it's not about like making this false, this perspective was false. Well, no, based on, how I was conditioned or the experience I had early on, that is what it felt like from those shoes in that moment.
Right.
But, one thing that I teach is that, we're born in dependence. We need our parents to feed us, to bathe us, to take care of us, to shelter us, and in order to survive. And then we grow into our adulthood and we become our intention, the purpose is to go into independence. So somewhere between dependence and independence, there has to be a transition point. And that point is about taking responsibility for the thoughts, for the perceptions that I choose. Because up until that point, it's basically sort of given to us, conditioned, nurtured, part of it's what we come in with. And there's this point, it's this magical point where we now start to take ownership for what we're thinking and how we're perceiving the experiences that we have, because if you were to take that and put it back in the shoes of the child whose parents are divorcing, then you can look at it a totally different way. You can see a different perspective in these new shoes. And it's a lot easier to do that. So, what I say is we're given what we're given. We're born into whatever situations we are, as hard as they can be. And, I didn't have an easy childhood. So I was born into some stuff that was hard for me to work with. But as I see it now, from where I'm at now, it was part of my path. It was part of what I needed to move through in order to become who I am. And it's almost as if my father didn't play that role, then I wouldn't necessarily become the person that I am now. I wouldn't have had the wounds to overcome. Right. I wouldn't have been doing what I'm doing now because of it, So it's all part of my path, and it's there waiting for me. And there's this magical moment where I learned to sort of start, as if like it was hard because I was going up this hill. It was hard. And then I finally get to the top, and then it got easy, and thriving, And so it's like it's hard until you get to that point. And then
the shift.
When you shift, into that thriving place, then everything changes.
Yeah, neat. And all that stuff that we thought was such garbage in the past, it's neat when I've been spending a lot of time just because it's Thanksgiving time in our groups talking about how do we turn this. So there are a lot of fresh people in there going, oh my God, I'm in such a horrible place. And I go, how do you take this and turn it into useful and grateful? Mm-hmm. Right? Because we don't look at it that way. But my past becomes my greatest asset.
Yes,
it
absolutely.
really becomes my greatest asset when I can share that with somebody else and go, man, if I can make it through that, over that hill that you're talking about, so can you and so can anybody. It just takes a shift in that, right?
Yep.
So we are going to take a break and come back and talk about a couple of things. It's interesting. I noticed that in the last few minutes we've been talking about personal growth, not necessarily relational growth, but that's the key, isn't it? Right? Yeah. So how do we bring that into a relationship? And let's talk about what that looks like, what healthy relationships look like, and where people can go with that, and offer some tools in the last 20 minutes that we have here. Yeah. This is the Way Out Recovery Hour. I'm Bob Sharits. We'll be right back.
Your building sign is essential in getting customers to your location. Feathers can help get your business noticed. They walk you through each phase of your building sign project, providing special attention to detail and quality. Feathers will give you a sign you can be proud of. Your building sign will draw customers in instead of having them drive by. Feathers on Soledad in Canyon Country, across from the Edwards Theater. Or go to feathersphoto.com. That's feathersphoto.com.
Vargo Physical Therapy is a leading provider of rehabilitation treatment for sports and industrial injuries, as well as post-operative and age-related conditions. Vargo Physical Therapy patients have access to the best high-tech and most effective rehabilitation equipment. With locations in Canyon Country and Valencia, Vargo Physical Therapy has been serving the Santa Clarita Valley for over 15 years. Go to vargopt.com. Vargo Physical Therapy helps you get back in the game.
AV Equipment Rental is your local rental store. No matter how big or how small your home project is, AV Equipment Rental has the tool you need to do the job right. From painting to plumbing, landscaping to automotive, their knowledgeable staff will make sure you get the right tool for the right price. In fact, they'll even help you load it into your car. I bet you didn't know they have propane to fill your barbecue tank, and there's no minimum quantity. With a large supply of tools and helpful and professional staff with a hometown service attitude, AV Equipment Rental is your local Santa Clarita rental authority. Stop by AV Equipment Rental today on Railroad Avenue in Newhall.
Santa Clarita's hometown station.
Now FM 98.1 FM and AM 1220. Your hometown station.
Welcome back to the Way Out Recovery Hour. I'm Bob Sharits. I'm in studio today with relationship coach and expert Jessica Hartley. Before we go any further, what is your, how do people contact you again?
661-347-8473.
Or connect at?
JessicaHartley.com.
Okay, connect at JessicaHartley.com. Send her an email. I'm sure that you're more than happy to have an interaction back and forth, offer some tips, maybe get somebody into your office to talk to you about how their relationship can thrive more than it is.
Yeah, usually what I do if someone has an issue that's pressing and they want to really figure it out, I speak with them on the phone. We take some time, just kind of take a look at what's going on and then go from there.
Okay. Cool. So if you're just joining us or if you've been listening, it's interesting. We're talking about relationships, but one of the things, I think we agree on a lot of the things, but one of the things that comes up from both of our perspectives is that it has to be individual work in order for a relationship to work. Is that if we're bringing any old stuff or we're carrying, unfinished business, that we have to be aware of that and really take time to work on ourselves so that I can bring a better me to this relationship. Mm-hmm. As we go through this week and we have families that are gathering for Thanksgiving, right? There can be oftentimes tension in those relationships in the family dynamic because of old resentments or whatever people are carrying along with them. If I have some of that going on or I'm in that situation this week, what can I do with that? Just, I want to hear something. What can I do to make Thanksgiving better than it's going to be if I'm carrying that stuff around, I suppose? What do I do with that stuff?
Well, there's two perspectives here that I think are worth exploring. One is the perspective of someone that's struggling and wants to come to Thanksgiving, but is maybe a little bit hesitant. And then the other perspective is oftentimes what I run into is a lot of people that want to help this family member, be it a brother, a child, or a spouse even that is struggling, but don't necessarily know how to best help or be of service to that person. A lot of times in both situations, it's as if we have this desire, we really want to help, and then we try to fix the situation or
I'm coming in wanting to really help, but all I'm doing is telling you what you need to do or something like that. Like that might be how it feels.
Right. Yeah.
The intention is good, but maybe the approach it needs to change.
Right. Exactly. And that's what I would mention is that the intention to really be of assistance is awesome. But the best way to really help someone that is struggling is to start with empathy. So there's something that I teach it's called, I call it the EAV, Eve it's a little acronym, but, to start with empathy, saying, hey, you're struggling. I see that you're struggling. I've been there too. Here's how I've been there too. And so, sometimes here's the interesting thing, which is kind of fun once we start working with people, but, what we judge in others, be it the person, that irks us the most or the things that we see in our family member that bothers us so much, when we judge, it's that act of pointing the finger, and there are really more fingers pointing back at ourselves. Right. So there is a place that I am also doing a similar kind of thing either to myself or someone else, or I would do the same if I was in their shoes.
Got it. Yeah.
And so it's like to start off with empathy and to say, hey, you know what? I've struggled through stuff too, and I didn't know how to get out, or it was hard for me, or, as best as you can to just really try to show this person that you dearly love and want to help that it's okay. I've been there too.
So maybe before I have that interaction, I take some time to sit quietly and go, let me put myself in their shoes. Yeah. How would I be feeling if I'm that sort of outcast family member or ostracized or even feeling that way, even if it's not true? How would I feel coming to this family gathering if I'm the one struggling, and get myself into an empathetic viewpoint?
Right.
So that when I come there, I can come with that approach. Like, right. I've been there. I know how you feel,
Absolutely. Because the truth is that we all have our own individual struggles and things that we have to overcome in our lives. No one in the world is exempt from that, because our innate being is about growth, right. So we're always growing, and growth can't happen unless there's some sort of challenge that we must overcome.
That's a human condition, right?
Yes.
We are going to struggle.
Yes. So, yeah. At minimum, maybe you can't relate with the drugs or the alcohol or the depression or whatever it is, but you can relate with whatever struggle that you have overcome or even felt, or maybe you're even in still. Hey, there's this conflict, or hey, there's this challenge I'm facing, and I don't know what to do about it, or I've struggled, or this is how I've learned to overcome that challenge. So start there. Relate to the human condition that I've got a challenge and you've got a challenge, and start there, because what most people do is they try to point the finger and fix, and that is judgment. And the problem with that is that the person that is on the other side that is struggling is going to feel that as judgment, even if it's well-intended. And that judgment is really what's putting them there in the first place. It's really that pain and the judgment and the self-judgment and the perceived judgment, imaginary or not, that put them there in the first place. So when you have good intentions and you go about it with like, hey, you're doing this wrong, or even, coming at it with an approach of being, tough and trying to get them to, fix their thing because, you've got this addiction and you haven't fixed it, like, get strong, sometimes there's that approach, and that could be okay, but it's got to start with empathy. If you don't start with empathy first and say like, hey, this is a struggle I've had, or I can relate to the struggle, or I can relate in some way, then it's going to be perceived as judgment, and it's just going to reinforce exactly what you don't want in that person.
Yeah, it's like I'm already so ashamed of the way that I'm feeling and the behavior that I've been participating in, especially if it's an addiction, that the last thing I want to hear is, is that I'm a bad person and doing all the things
I'm doing it wrong again,
right.
Yet again.
Yeah. So Eve, so empathy?
So empathy, and then the A is appreciation. So to show appreciation, show that you can see the good in this person. Thank you for showing up to Thanksgiving.
I'm so glad you showed up. We love you so much. Man, it's nice to see you.
Yes. Yeah. And then, wherever it is that you can find the good, even if it's just, in saying like, hey, I'm human, you're human. I appreciate that we're both showing up. I appreciate that we can have this conversation. You can find appreciation in the smallest ways, but sometimes it's just appreciation that can make a huge difference. Actually, in relationship, that's often one of the things that bears the most resentment and creates a breakup.
I feel like I'm never appreciated.
I'm underappreciated. Yeah, I do all these things and I'm not appreciated for it. And again, there is part of that is their own conditioning and their own wound that they need to change that perception. But the other part of it is it would help so much if I just felt appreciated, if they just, so if you do want to be of assistance, then empathy, appreciation, and the last one is validation. So validation in that, in the form of lifting them up. So sometimes we try to fix or help other people by showing them where their flaws are. And when we point out those flaws, it just connects that person to the fact that they're fallible, and not good enough, and more reasons to feel crappy about myself. So if we turn that around and instead validate them in the way of seeing past their flaws and lifting them up to who they can be, that is where the magic is. So to be able to, say from hey, child of mine that is struggling, I know that you are strong. I know that you've got something in you. I know you have a heart of gold. I know that you're deeply loving. Be it. Right. You've got that. Start showing it, and just really come from a genuine, heartfelt place and just lift that person up to who they really are, because their struggle is not really who they are. It's their struggle. Right. It's not who they are. So see past that and lift and validate who they really are. So that's the validation point.
That could be a little tricky for families. We get, So I have them do these exercises where we'll have family groups, a few families together, and I say, okay, we're going to go outside. So we do a lot of stuff where we go hiking and we go out to parks and we do things like that with our families. And I will tell them there's only one rule today as we spend time hanging out. You can't talk about anything heavy. So we're not going to spend time pointing out the stuff that's been wrong. By the time you get to us, that's all you've been talking about for the last however long is the things that we need to fix. So first of all, we're not going to do this. And we're not going to do that in this particular exercise. And another thing that I want you guys to wrap your head around is let's start to assume the best.
Yes.
rather than assume the worst. And they're like, what do you mean? I go, every day we come home thinking, what problem are we going to find today? How is he or she going to screw up today? What phone call am I going to get from the school today, right? And let's just assume the best. You can do this. You are strong enough to do this. You have this in you. You are awesome. Now go try it.
Yes.
And if they make a mistake, cool.
It's okay.
Yeah, right? And
Yeah.
when we start to hear that, it's amazing what happens in these families is they start to see that. Practice seeing the best, and all of a sudden you start to see the best, and you're like, okay, so you made a mistake, but I also noticed how much effort you gave it,
Right.
or that you showed up. You know, we do those types of things when they walk in. When they first walk in for the thing, I'm like, you're incredible just because you showed up today. Most people don't. They'll make a phone call and go, oh, I can't do that, and never show up for the appointment. And so just walking through the door.
And just to add on to that, it's like, I've been in experiences where, as I said earlier, I was wounded. I had stuff. I had this stuff that I had to heal and work through. And I had my husband actually at the time who he believed in me. There was, something he said at one point that was like, Jess, I know that you're meant for incredible things. And the power that gave me was crazy. Like it shot me right back into the core of who I am and allowed me to hold on to that and say, you know what? That's true. I am, and I can do this. And it helped me to just really gave me so much strength when in a time that I didn't have that, So if you can be that person in that person's life, they will be so grateful for you. That is the most powerful thing I feel that a family or a loved one can be for someone that's in their struggle.
Well, and you kind of get a personal perspective of how maybe deep you've been in the hopelessness or something. If you've ever had this experience, and I know that I have, and it sounds like you have, when somebody gives you that validation right there, when somebody pays you a compliment or something, and it's just whatever it is, and all of a sudden, I want to cry, because we do these things where I'll have groups and I go, okay, all we're going to do today is we're just going to turn to the person at your left because you've been in a group for a while and just tell them a couple of good things about themselves. And by the time we get 2 or 3 people around the group, and these are really essentially strangers, I mean, they've been in group for a while, hearing good things about myself, by the time it gets to the second or third person, people are crying in the groups because they're like, oh my God, I don't hear that about myself. I've been spending the last 10 years just beating myself up. It's wonderful. Yeah, it's wonderful.
And it just helps them touch back into the truth of who they
and that
know.
Is the truth.
They innately already know, but it's been lost and covered by all this garbage,
Yeah, we forget that we're born perfect, wonderful, loving human beings with all this just incredible beings. You know?
We have such a capacity.
And we have experiences where we lose that. And sometimes by the time they get to us, they're like, I haven't ever looked at that. Or maybe it's been so long, I just feel like I'm, whatever.
Yes.
And, okay, so the other side of the coin, what if I'm the one showing up? What tools can I bring if I'm the one beating myself up, bringing it to Thanksgiving?
Yes. Okay. So let's go into those shoes. So I'm struggling. My family in the past has judged me.
Right.
Let's assume
maybe I have an addiction or something.
Yeah, I've got an addiction. I've got something I'm struggling with. And so let's just, for the purposes of this to be the most useful, I want to assume that there's no one in this family that's listening to our radio podcast today, and that they are not going to do the EAV. So they're probably going to do the judgment or the trying to fix. Okay, so in that situation,
so don't expect anything different.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: is that it's a really wonderful opportunity for you to grow individually on your own. So to not need the validation from your family members, because see, there is this beautiful place that we eventually are meant to get to, where we are independent of what other people think about us, that we're not dependent, or our worth is not dependent, or our happiness or the path I take is not dependent on what other people think, that it's driven from inside of me, that my worth is driven from inside of me, that my happiness is driven from inside of me, and the path I take is from inside of me.
Right.
And so there's this separation that has to happen. And so when our family gives us the blessing of not validating us. It is the beautiful.
Right. The opportunity for growth.
Yes.
Yeah. The blessing.
It really is a beautiful blessing and opportunity for me to say, I don't need that. They're giving me this gift because if they did validate me, then it would be, I wouldn't learn this lesson. I wouldn't be able to stand grounded and confident that in myself, for myself, and so it really is a beautiful blessing. And I've had this in my experience. I've had multiple times where my family didn't validate me in the way that I wanted. And at first it's very painful, but it's also now I see it as such the biggest blessing because it was that struggle that it helped me to separate that cord. And here's the thing. Your family loves you. They absolutely love you. So do not perceive validation as equal to love. They absolutely love you.
Yeah, they love you even if they haven't learned the tools.
They don't know the tools.
Right?
They weren't listening to this and they don't know the EAV. But they do love you and they show their love in the best way that they know, doing the best that they think is best for you or for themselves. They have their own wounds and their own struggles that they're going through as well, and their own conditioning and their own everything else, so it's they love you. So perceive their love in the way that they're showing it. Are they cooking dinner for you? That's how they're showing love for you. Are they giving you a hug? Are they not are they including you in this or that? That's how they're showing you their love. So open your heart and yourself to be able to receive it in the way that they're offering, in the way that they can show it, and stop needing their love to be the way that you need it to be in order to make it easy for you. See, because if it's easy for you, you're not going to learn.
So I practice these tools that I practice in my own family or I have in the past. So if you're in that spot, before I step into the house, I stop and I take a deep breath and I get myself centered. And when I go in there, I have cultivated an internal self-talk that is the truth. And I want to offer this to anybody who's out there listening. The truth about you is you are powerful. You are beautiful. You are capable. You can do this.
Yes.
You have all of that stuff inside of you. And so the voice inside of your head that you can cultivate to that self-talk to get through those moments is I can do this. Yes. I am strong enough to do this. I am beautiful. I am capable. I am worthwhile, all of that stuff. And then sometimes the biggest tool that I found inside of my family is as they're doing their same old stuff, I have this voice in my head that says, Bob, now is a good time to keep your mouth shut. And I just sit and just pay attention to what's going on because I don't want to bring out my old stuff and start a fight, And so I'll sit there and listen and get that self-talk going on and do some deep breaths. And if you need to, step outside for a few minutes. Like get out of the crowd, Yes. It's okay. Yeah. Call somebody that you love and trust and say, hey, talk me through this. Whatever it takes to get through this. And like you said earlier, practice, and we learn how to have these thriving relationships, right?
Absolutely, yes.
So we have half a minute here left. Wednesdays at 2:00 on KHTS starting December 12th, Thriving Relationships with Jessica Hartley. 30 seconds for our listeners. What are you going to give them? 30 seconds.
Contact me if you'd like, 661-347-8473.
Yeah.
And, let's be the people that we really are, touch into who you really are, whether you're the one on the struggle or the family member that cares about that one. Be who you really are, which is that unconditionally loving person that comes then, and that love comes from within you, not outside of you.
That's right. And if it seems like a lot, please, please, please contact one of us and let us help you through that process. That's what we do, is we help people through that process. What a pleasure it's been to be on this show with you. We could talk all day about relationships.
Absolutely.
It'd be really cool, but we need to end this thing. I'm Bob Sharits. This is the Way Out Recovery Hour. I've been in studio with